Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Triple Coverage Podcast. I am Lance Nelson. To my left, Scott Kasson. To my right, Benjamin Shoop. The draft is upon us. We're going to turn our attention from free agency to the draft. What's up, Shoop?
Oh, nothing much. Glad to be back after last week. A little bit down and under the weather, but we're back now, and we got to experience a good Sabres game this week as we went. Scott unfortunately could not make it as he does not live in Buffalo, but yeah, it's been a good week. Ready to talk some football and get into the draft here and get into what the Bills need to do in the next month and a half to really solidify the last few spots and the last few needs that they have.
Yeah, Scott, how you feeling as we turn our sights on the 2025 NFL Draft?
I'm focused on a couple other things before we get there. Opening day for baseball. Yankees got a nice win today. Devin Williams made it scary in his debut, but they won.
Let's
Happy
pause
baseball's
right
back.
there.
And
Sorry to cut you off, but the Yankees did make some history today. Well, mostly Austin Wells made some history today. The first ever catcher to lead off opening day game with a home run. That's pretty special. Austin Wells, New York Yankees.
Yeah, pretty cool. And they held on and won. We got the Sweet 16, college basketball starting tonight, college hockey tournament going on. So I know we got the draft to talk about, and there's some Bills things, but in a lull of Bills week, it's happy to be filled with all the other sports.
Sounds like Scott is lasered in to the draft here, folks, for this episode of Triple Coverage, is what he meant to say. Yeah,
Right.
a lot going on in the sports world. Obviously, we are going to talk to you about the Bills mostly tonight, but we do love all those other sports that Scott mentioned, and we know how much Ben is super stoked about the Yankees starting off 1-0 and going to contend with his Bastion people over there. First thing, want to have a little bit of fun with this thing, and you know that Scott likes to do his betting takes a lot, so we thought we'd start out with an over-under. The Bills do have 10 draft picks in the 2025 NFL Draft. We just set the over-under on 9.5. So, guys, over-under 9.5 picks made by the Bills.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go quick, and I'm gonna say it simply. I think they're gonna go under. I don't see the need for this team to take 10 players just because. What are 10 guys? How are they gonna fit into this roster? I mean, you've seen it even in the past drafts where you have the Bills drafting guys and then they go to the practice squad and they get taken. I mean, Alex Austin being the one that got stolen by the Pats, still on the Pats. You've seen other guys have to go to the practice squad. So I do think under. I think they move up, even if it's a slight trade up. I do think they move up to get to 9 picks at the absolute highest. But we'll see. I mean, Brandon Beane won't force anything, but he does like to be aggressive and does like to go get his guys. So we'll see. But I'm going to go with under.
Yeah, I'm going to go with under as well. I do think they're going to make a lot of picks. I do think that they need to find guys in this draft who can come in and contribute right away. I don't know if they're going to make a huge trade on day one. I know Bean, we've seen him a lot of times, like he did for Kincaid, like he did for Elam, moves up a little bit. So maybe we move up into the, early to mid 20s instead of the late 20s. But a spot I wanted to highlight in round 5 in the beginning of 6, we pick 4 times between 169 and 177. I can promise you we're not making all of those picks. So Brandon Beane is really good at discovering talent in day 2, in day 3. Look at Shakir, look at Milano, look at Benford, guys like that. So I could see them maybe moving up into like the third. We don't have a third round pick because we traded that away for Amari Cooper. Thought we were maybe going to get a third for Gabe Davis as a comp pick, but unfortunately he didn't play the whole season, so we only ended up getting, I think we got a 4th for him. So yeah, so I think they're going to make some trades in day 2 and day 3 and make a lot of moves. So yeah, I don't think they're going to make 10 picks. And I would put an over under maybe at 1.5 trades, and I would take the over there too.
I will say before you go, Lance, I will say I do think there is a chance, though. We do know Brandon Beane, even if he does trade up to get under 9 or under 10 picks, and at that 9-8 picks, he does also like to trade back late in the draft, as we've seen. So he could go down to 8 picks and then go back up to 10 picks by the time, like Scott said, we have so many in that little range of 160 to 170 or 170 or 160 to 180, where you could see him potentially, if they can't find a partner to move up with all those picks, potentially if they don't like a guy there in those spots, moving back and getting 2 extra 7ths for all we know, because we've seen him do that before. So it could happen where it seems like he's going to go under 9.5, and he ends up being right back at over 9.5. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to go under, and I think that the Bills not having a third-round pick plays right into that. They're going to have a third-round pick. There's no way the Bills are going to go the entire third round without making a selection, I don't believe. So I will say under as well, because I think they're going to package some picks. Or if they do trade back out of 30, sort of like what they did last year, and pick up a third-rounder there. But in some way, shape, or form, they are going to pick in the third round. I don't believe they will sit the third round out. The third round has been a pretty decent round for Bean, I believe, with Bernard. I think Shakir was third round, right? So pretty good.
5th.
Oh, he was 5th? Okay. So Bernard was there. Last year was Carter. Who else was third round?
Last year,
was
Dorian Williams was a third.
No, overall.
Dorian Williams was
a third-round
the
pick.
very last pick of the third, I think he was, or like one of the last picks of the third. So Dorian Williams, I think, was.
Right on.
Wasn't Singletary a third-round pick too?
I think he might have been second.
Dawson Knox was a third-round pick. Spencer Brown was a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, that's. But the point is, Bean's sweet spot is
Very
kind of
good.
in that area. So I think that he's
Thank you,
going
man.
to go
Scott's
down and get that. Get that a selection in third round. I don't think he's going to sit it out, basically. So before we
Zach
move
Moss
on,
was a third-round pick. We don't have to talk about that.
we were not planning on it.
He had some great years, or great year in Indy that one year. So the year he left.
There's a question in the comments here we might just take early, because it does affect kind of draft strategy, so we can bring it up a little bit, or we can go through the trade scenario. I think it'll be good. TJ, just hang tight. We will talk about that comment. But I think let's talk about, if the Bills do trade up in the first round, what position do you believe they'll trade up to take, or what position would you want them to trade up and take? The 2-part question here.
So I would say something on the defense. If they're going to trade up early on, I would say it has to be to get a starting caliber 1 technique, or possibly a corner if someone falls. But the biggest hold of me on this offense right now on this team right now is defensive tackle. So if a guy falls, like I know Kenneth Grant's been someone who's been mocked to them a lot. From Michigan, if someone like that is around, 23, 24, 25, we've seen that Bean isn't afraid to pull the trigger and move up a little bit. And generally, you don't have to give up a ton to do that. We have 2 seconds. Maybe they give up one of those, or something next year, which is future us's problem, which will never matter. So I would think if there's like that guy who they think can come in and be a day 1 starter on the defensive line, if he's there in the mid-20s, I see that they'll go up and get him.
Yeah, I think it has to be either corner or D tackle, like Scott said. I mean, Walter Nolan's another guy where if he starts slipping a little bit, he could be a guy that they go up and get. Corner wise, I mean, there's a couple guys there. I think the one guy that to me stands out, even though I think he'll fall to 30. But again, if there's a run on corners, we saw it the year of Kyrie Elam, and I know people don't want to talk about it, but they did get a little antsy and then trade up for Kyrie Elam because they started seeing corners go off the board. They saw McDuffie then go, and they were like, okay, we got to go get our guy there. So, there's a guy like Trey Amos, who we talked about a little bit before the show. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his first name because I'm always getting it wrong, but Thomas, the corner from Florida State, he's another guy that they could go up and get. But yeah, I mean, Maxwell Hairston as well from Kentucky. He's another guy. But yeah, you could see him go up and get somebody. I would be shocked if it's for like a receiver. I know that a lot of people would like to see Matthew Golden in the Bills uniform. But I just don't see the need for at least trading up for a receiver. If they go receiver, I think they'll take it if, let's say, Golden falls to him or somebody falls to him. unless it's somehow like a guy like McMillan, who won't come close if he somehow falls and they want to go get a guy who's a stud. But yeah, I think if they do move up, it's got to be somebody on the defensive side, and most likely, like Scott said, either a 1T or a corner there to go across from Benford. But there's still some time before the draft that we could see maybe a corner come back. We saw Rasul Douglas, who I know we might talk about that a little bit later. Rasul Douglas was still working out in Bill's shorts, so who knows what will happen with corner.
I work out in Bill's shorts.
Yeah, like
Same.
yeah, it could mean nothing. It could, it could mean everything. We don't know. He could be sending a message saying they're close to getting the deal done, but we don't know. But yeah, we'll see what happens with corner, because I do think that they will add at least one more guy before the draft, whether it's a Dane Jackson level guy or a guy that is more of a proven CB1, CB2 type of guy. So we'll see.
Yeah, it seems like if they're going to trade up, it's going to be a guy that can play a lot. So my knee-jerk reaction was like, oh yeah, get a defensive lineman, even if that's an edge rusher. But I think like the edge rusher probably wouldn't play so much right away. It would be good to have, a stud edge rusher if one fell and they were able to go up and get him. But I don't think they're going to need to expect him to go right away, because they do have other edge rushers that are going to start. So I agree with Scott there, being that the defensive tackle would be the position they could use right away at the top of the draft, but also potentially a defensive back too. I wouldn't be mad about that.
I do think sorry to cut you off there. If for edge, if they do go up and trade for edge, they're not going to be trading up into the teens for a guy for an edge. It will be like a slight trade up. Or if they're going to trade up into the teens, it most likely would be for T tackle or corner. I still don't see them trading up that far, because you'd have to really give up a good amount to get up that far. But yeah, edge, that's the tough part is they're going to be an edge rusher that is that like stud level guy that they believe is going to come in and be a stud that is going to fall into those 20s. I know I saw Michael Williams commented. I mean, again, even if he falls a little bit to like 15, 16, 17 range, it's so tough for the Bills at 30 to get up there that edge would just be such a tough spot to really move up. And I don't think, besides after really James Pierce, is there a guy that you would really trade up heavily for at edge? Probably not. So yeah, I agree with you, Lance. I don't think edge is really too much of a trade up candidate.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest hole in the starting lineup right now for me is cornerback too. The biggest need on the defense right now is, like Scott mentioned, that one tech defensive tackle. But I think that we do have Daquan Jones as a starter, that like yes, we can upgrade him. Yet, like, I'm not sure that if a rookie was drafted in the first round, if he automatically becomes a starter there over Daquan Jones. Probably. I mean, it's a good chance he could beat him out, but also like we do have a starter already there at the defensive tackle, and now we can all agree that we would like that position to produce more and maybe have like the ability to stuff the tush push and things like that. But I think overall, as far as a starting lineup spot, the CB2 is the most available right now, and we're not sure about the status of Rasul Douglas, although I think they have to have some plans. I'm keeping an eye on him to potentially bring him back in. If my interpretation of that Rasul situation is that the Bills probably have made him an offer that he wants to see if he can beat on the open market, and then if he doesn't beat it on the open market come June, and the Bills have the money still sitting there, then he comes back. But I don't believe that. They're just letting him walk, and I don't believe they're going into the draft with Dane Jackson as their plan CB2. I think they made the move to maybe have the optics like, oh, we don't need a CB2 now because we've signed this guy, but like I don't think we can seriously expect that to be the case. We're going to need to have someone a little more formidable, in my opinion. I would be more comfortable if we had someone a little more formidable at CB2 prior to the draft, but doesn't look like that is going to happen. So for me, CB2 is the starting position that has the hole at it, but overall the biggest need is going to be that one tech defensive tackle and it makes sense to try to get the best one you can get for years to come, because the Bills have continuously tried to like recycle defensive linemen year after year, and it would be nice to have control of a guy. I know we have Carter now, but to have control of some young guys along the defensive line for years to come, so it's not this constant turnover, one here, one there, 1 year deals, trying to kind of patchwork up the defensive line, because I think we can be honest that the defensive line is probably the most important to the Bills' success, and maybe why they really haven't been able to get over the hump and win a Super Bowl over the last few years.
Yeah, I think it has maybe not the most success regular season wise, but yeah, like you said, when it gets to the playoffs, deep in the playoffs, that's when D line's going to. I mean, it's been shown, right? You've seen it with these champions, the Chiefs. I mean, Chris Jones has been a force for them, and then you saw that the Eagles did this past year. It's even the Bucks, the year that they won it, and that was what 5 years ago at this point, 4 years ago at this point. It's D line is the difference maker in those games if you can make the opposing quarterback uncomfortable, because when you get to the Super Bowl, no matter who it is, the quarterback is playing at the top of his game, and you have to throw him off. So if you can't throw him off, then that's going to be an issue, and we've seen it with the Bills when it comes to that. And who's a guy that always goes through my mind, and Brandon Beane did draft, that I wish that they would have kept. It's hindsight is 2020. I know he got also a pretty good deal, but Harrison Phillips is now in Minnesota, who's had a very good career over there so far. I believe he was injured this past year, though. I believe did get a pretty good
third round pick too.
Yeah, was it another third round pick? Yes. So I mean, hey, maybe they just wait till the third round to draft a D tackle, because it seems like third round usually goes pretty well. But yeah, he's a guy that I think you wish that they would have kept, because I think Ed and Phillips would have been a very good duo for years to come. But now you got to fill that spot.
Yeah. If the Bills were to trade down from 30, what would you expect in return? A pick or package of picks, or actual player that they can plug into their lineup?
I feel like that's picks. Like whenever you're trading down with the draft, and it's very rare that you see players get traded on draft night. So yeah, if they're going to make any kind of a trade, I could see it being similar to last year. Although I do think that they'll make a first round pick this year. Last year, I thought they trade down. This year, I do think they make a pick. So yeah, more picks. But I mean, we kind of have a lot of picks, like we just talked about. Yeah. So I'd be surprised if they traded down from 30. But if they did, maybe they pick up another third, they pick up another second. Last year we went into the draft without a second, and they, or without a third, it was without a something, and
without a third,
coming out without a third. Yeah, we got Dwayne.
Because then we got Carter.
So
yeah, and maybe even next year picks, right? They could go in and grab some picks for next year as well.
Yeah, if there's somebody that's on the board at 30 that they think they can get early in the second round, or maybe they trade back and then trade up in the second to get them, something like that. I mean, as we know, for Brandon Beane, he's going to make moves on draft night, and if he does trade back, I think it'd be picks, not necessarily a player, because I don't know who they would get that would fit in, and also I don't know who they'd get that they could really afford with the current cap situation.
Yeah, I think when it comes to trading back, it'd have to be a situation like last year where the Bills get to their pick, and there's a bunch of guys where they have very closely rated, and they're not really jumping at the bit for one of these guys, so they do trade back. I mean, D tackle wise, that'd be the position I think if you do trade back in the second round, you pick up a third and you trade back in the second round. If they really like a TJ Sanders or a Darius Alexander, who knows how far some of these other D tackles will fall as well. Just in general, I mean, such a deep class for D tackles that if they see him start slipping, maybe they do say, okay, well let's pick up another pick here and end up getting a guy that we still have higher rated or graded well in that high second round pick. I mean, high second rounders you've seen become pivotal players on winning teams. You've seen the Lions especially have been a team that went up and got guys. The Eagles with Cooper DeJean. Lions, I believe, Brian Branch they traded up for as well there. They might have had the pick automatically. So, I mean, there's a bunch of guys there if they want to end up double dipping. I mean, D tackles, like we said, there's a million guys there that they could end up going to get. And if they get to 30 and you see that most of their high-end guys are off the board, because this is also one of those drafts where people are saying there's not many high-end talent in this draft. This is a weaker overall draft class. So if they get to 30 and they have all their first-round guys off, because kind of like last year. Last year, I believe that's what they said. They said that they didn't have any more first-round grades left when they got to their pick, so they traded back. So we could see them trade back. I honestly think trading back is more likely than trading up in the first round for them. I do think, like Scott said, I think they sit at 30 this year and they just make the pick because having that fifth year is valuable when it comes to a rookie. But I do think trading back is more likely just because, again, they would like to probably get back into that third round or even move up in the second round and have 2 early seconds. We'll see. But I don't think they do either, though.
Yeah, for sure. Spin, I wasn't suggesting we should pick up a CB before the draft. I even said Rasul Douglas probably has an offer and that in June they'd probably kick the tires on seeing if they want to bring him back. So I'm not sure what the disconnect is there, but no, I'm not suggesting, I don't think anybody suggested pay a CB. And if we take Douglas, I think the deal would be really team friendly. So there's not going to be any sort of investment made at CB prior
There's no
to
way
the
it
draft
can't be.
or
We
after.
don't have the
Yeah,
money for it to
we
not
don't have the
be.
money. So it's like, it's going to have to be a super low deal that, that's what Bean does. He says, all right, go test free agency. If you want to come back and play here towards the minimum, or $2 or $3 million, then that offers here to come play back in Buffalo with a chance to win and play with Josh Allen. So that's really the deal there. Some other comments here. John says the rumor is they go up to 24 with the Vikings, who only have 4 picks. What do you guys think? Like, what's the highest you would think that we talked about the teens being maybe too high? I thought 16 to 18 is probably their cap as far as how far they could get up with the, assets they have. I don't even know if they would spend enough assets to get that far. 18 is probably where I would cap it. But what do you guys think for either John's comment as far as the 24 with the Vikings, and also like how far do you think they could, or how far would you be comfortable with them going up?
I mean, for the right guy, I'm comfortable with them going up as far as they want. But I don't think I think the cap might be 22, 21, just because that difference again in 30 compared to 20 is massive. I mean, a lot of people, it's completely different than a pick between 15 and even 10, right? You're the back end of the first round. You're getting the lower end of the first round talent. And some of these teams might not even have 30 guys, 32 guys that are first round talent. So moving up is going to be tough. I do think if you move up even to 21, 20, you're going to have to probably give up a pretty good pick next year or give up a second this year, which I don't think the Bills want to do. So I think the cap will probably be around 20, 21. But I think 24 is probably the more realistic when it comes to if they do trade up. I think between 24 and like 26, 27 is that range of where you'd see the Bills really start to get to that point of like, okay, they could move up here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they go up farther than the mid to early 20s. If they do trade up, I see something that I said earlier. Like when they got Elam, they moved up, a couple spots. They got Kincaid, they moved up a couple spots. I don't see them making a big splash on draft night and moving up to 15, 16, 17, 18, anything like that. I also think that they need to get some more roster depth this draft at some certain positions, especially like the D lines we talked about. So I think that they don't want to give up too many picks in this year's draft. And as we know, draft picks are affordable on a lot cheaper contracts. And with how much we're paying the top guys on our roster and maybe paying more guys on the roster, if guys like Benford and Cook get extended, guys who can contribute on those rookie deals are super, super valuable. So, yeah, I see them trading up maybe to the mid to early 20s if there's a guy there that they don't think they can get at 29 or 30, but I don't think they're going to move up a ton.
Right on. And then the next, okay.
Yeah, I just want to real quick before we move on to the next
I didn't see your comment there.
I want to talk real quick about this comment again from Spin. Going to go back on it. The number one thing for me, why you would get another guy before the draft is one, cornerbacks are very hit or miss in the NFL, especially drafting them. And we saw it this past year. Injuries happen Do we want to end up relying on a guy that doesn't have much experience when it comes to bringing him in and being able to perform at a high level at a crucial point? So I always think depth, especially at a position like corner. I mean, any defensive depth position is huge for this team. Offense might not be as big because you have a guy like Josh Allen, but defensively, you're the more depth, the better. And we saw it this past year with cornerback, where let's say they do draft a cornerback and he goes down with an injury, or Benford goes down with an injury late. You're going to want to rely on Dane Jackson or Jamarcus Ingram to step up. And not saying they can't, they definitely could, but it's always the better. The more the better for me when it comes to getting depth. And if you can get a veteran guy on a cheap deal to come in and still draft a guy to learn from him, and for a year you have more talent is never a bad thing. Never a bad thing.
I don't think they're going to break the bank though and spend a bunch of money
Yeah.
on a CB. Like they're not going to bring in Asante Samuel Jr. before the draft or something like that, where they're going to have to, spend big money. I don't think anybody suggesting that, but I think that I find it hard to believe that Rasul Douglas doesn't have a deal on the table for some sort of modest contract that he's waiting to see if he can beat in the free market. And then if he doesn't get the offers he's looking for, I think it's that open-ended deal where he's welcome back and a team-friendly deal to go chase a ring, really. So that's my thought on the CB. Do you have anything to add, Scott, that you want to touch on with corner, I guess?
No, they don't have a ton of money to make a big move with. So I feel like Rasul Douglas probably wants more than the Bills can get him. I know I've said this like 6 times, but like they have $4 million salary cap and they got to sign the draft pick. So they're not making. Yeah, there you go. They're not making a big splash before the draft. We're gonna need to get guys in the draft who can contribute.
Right on. If you haven't done so already, please like and share this on Facebook. Please like and repost it on X. Like it on YouTube. Share with your friends. Go ahead, subscribe to that Built in Buffalo YouTube channel if you would. We are a triple coverage podcast sponsored by Monster Energy, the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo. All right, we're going to go a little bit sideways here with a comment quick from TJ, and then we'll get back on track with a little bit more of our planned questions for the draft before we get out of here. Before we get too far, well, we already got far. Sorry, buddy. Are we paying Jimbo Cook? Mixed feelings on what we should do. I love Sweet Baby Ray and I love Ty Johnson, and they are awesome in their own way, but Jimbo is elusive and smooth. There is no question in my mind that Jimbo has the skill, and I would love to have James Cook here as a Buffalo Bill. If they sign him to a long-term deal, I will purchase his jersey. I am a fan of his. I think he does great work. However, I just don't also think the Bills can legitimately spend the money he's asking for. So if he's willing to take a deal that's more beneficial to the team and more team friendly than what he's posted on social media, I think definitely I'm all in on re-signing him. I know we've probably touched on this a few episodes with James Cook and that sort of thing, but I guess give your thoughts on TJ's comments, guys, but also keep in mind, like, if there was a player trade on draft night, would James Cook be the most likely name from the Bills to be dealt?
Probably. I don't know who else they really would trade unless, I don't know. Yeah, probably. And you would imagine they could get a day 2 pick for him somewhere and maybe some other things. I don't think that they will. I think he most likely I think he plays the season with the Bills if he gets a deal or not.
I agree.
But yeah, I don't know if we're going to pay James Cook or not. I really don't. Like if they give him, 12, 11, 13, 14, 15 million dollars, are they going to use him that way? Like he doesn't play full snaps. He's not a 3-down back. Can't block, which is, okay, he can do all of the other things, but he's probably never going to be a full 3-down back. Even at Georgia, he wasn't a 3-down back. He was a change of pace back. So I don't know. It would be hard for me to swallow paying a guy $15 million who isn't like a complete running back. He's very good. And I think someone will pay him that if the Bills don't. But I don't know if it would be us. And I don't necessarily know if I want it to be us because every running back the Bills has brought in for the most part, outside of Zach Moss we talked about earlier, has been successful in the system. Singletary, I know he's not James Cook, not even close, but like he had 800 yards every season, and that was back when we didn't run the ball. So you can find running backs in the second, third, fourth, fifth, hell, even sixth, seventh round sometimes. They may not be as good as James Cook, and it really all depends what kind of offense the Bills continue to run, because if after this season Joe Brady leaves and becomes a head coach and we bring in someone else who wants to throw the ball more, then he's not going to be the focal point of the offense anymore. So I don't know. I don't know what they do, but I hope that if they do re-sign him, it's a contract that makes sense, because you see what happens when teams look at the Niners. Like they paid a whole bunch of people, and now they got to pay their quarterback, and you got to let people go. So I don't know. It'll be interesting, but yeah, I don't know what they do.
Yeah, I don't think they do, and I'm actually going to bring this comment up here from No Bones, where I actually think David Montgomery might get a heavier workload on a game-to-game basis than James Cook on average. Like, because they have
Gibbs
that
is the one who gets less.
Yeah, they have that 2 running back system, but they feed them both heavily. Like, they are a heavy running team, so that to me, like, even just speaks to, again, why would you pay James Cook that much money? I mean, it's not something like Scott said. It's not like he's out there every down, and you have guys coming in, not even late round draft picks. You have guys that are coming in that weren't wanted by the New York Jets that are coming in and performing, and it's the New York Jets. The New York Jets need talent, and they can't even keep their talent. And then it comes over here and they do great. I'm speaking on Ty Johnson there, but you can bring guys in. Yeah, I'm bringing on. You can bring guys in even from free agency, draft, whatever it is that can come in and perform with a guy like Josh Allen under center and an offensive line led by Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. You have an offensive line coach like Kramer, who just gets the best out of their guys when it comes to the run game. So if they do pay James Cook, I've said it before, I won't be mad, but I'm with Scott on this. I don't think they should. I don't see why you would. And it kind of sounded like when Brandon Beane was asked about it, it kind of sounded like they weren't really making a ton of progress. It was one of those, comments of like, oh, well, we'll see how it goes, and we're in talks and we've had conversations. Anytime that a GM to me says that they've had conversations, usually tells me that it hasn't been the greatest of conversations, and it hasn't really escalated much, especially with Brandon Beane. I mean, he talked about extensions before, and he has not. He said like, yeah, we've been talking extensively, and here he didn't say that. He kind of just said we've had these talks and we've had conversations. We'll see where they go. So that to me tells me at least this offseason they won't extend him. Maybe at the end of the season next year, or this next year they will, but I don't see why you would. I personally wouldn't. I like James Cook. He's a great running back, but you could use that money in a lot better ways than keeping James Cook, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, like, if you're not going to pay him, talks aren't going well, then, like, when is the best opportunity to get the most for him? Like, is the getting the most for him having him play the year out on his deal and letting him walk in free agency without any sort of compensation, but the compensation is the production you get from him on the field? Or is it like, well, if you're going to get return on him in the form of draft picks or players, like, is now the time to do that in the draft? So it's an interesting topic. I think, like, you have to think, like, if that's certainly true, that they're just not willing to do that, which I can get behind, because this roster is going to need a lot to stay competitive around Josh Allen, and a running back commanding that salary isn't necessarily productive in my mind, especially with the amount he's used, like you said, in less than 50% snap count. Like, unless they're going to increase that a ton, like, I just don't see it making sense. So if they want to, like, they have the ability to go get, a guy in the draft like Trayvon Henderson or something like that out of Ohio State, which will fill that role very well. If you're talking about playing 45% of snaps and things like that. So that's I just look at it like, if you're going to forego re-signing, like, I get maybe you want to get his production in 2025 and you want to have him there. Obviously he's very in command of the offense. He knows the playbook. So there's all those benefits you get from having him there. But if you're looking to get the most amount of return, maybe draft night is that biggest opportunity to get that, to make that splash move. I'm not sure, but that's
but I think if the Bills were in a different place, I'd agree with that. But the Bills, like, their Super Bowl window is probably as open as it's ever going to be this season. And I don't think that trading James Cook would help with that. Like, if he leaves and doesn't resign, like, that would be a bummer if he walks for nothing. But I think having him this year and helping them hopefully win a Super Bowl would be a lot more valuable than the second round pick you're going to get from him or something like that.
See, I don't think you get a day 2 pick out of him. It's one, it's a running back. 2, any team that you trade him to is going to get to give up a pick on top of pay him. So you're going to have to find a team that, 1, will pay him and 2, will give that up. I don't see you getting a day 2 pick out of it. I see you maybe getting a 4th rounder. I mean, maybe. And that would be maybe also giving up like a 6th back, just because, again, what team is going to say, yeah, we'll take James Cook and we'll give up a 2nd rounder and pay him $14 million or whatever he's going to want, when they could just go draft a running back like you guys are saying with the Bills? I don't see that happening. Like, I know I saw John in the comments, they at least get a 3rd out of them. I don't think you get that. And I know that some people, like you said, Lance, like, just get something out of him. You know, you don't just it's a return on investment. I do think that having him play out his contract, 1, makes you look better as an organization, because if you're going to just trade guys that don't want an extension or don't want an extension on your number, that to me is a bad look as the organization. And Brandon Beane's just
that's normal though.
It's not normal to trade every guy that won't give you what you want when it comes to a pick. I mean, you don't see that around the league. You see guys going to free agency. See guys get franchised. I mean, to me, it just doesn't make sense to get a 5th round pick out of him and then draft another guy and hope that he can produce like James Cook. I think you keep James Cook and see what happens. And if his number comes down, his number comes down. If it doesn't, thanks for all you did. We liked having you, and then you go replace him in this year or next year's draft, whatever you do. So, because to me, I don't see you getting a day 2 pick out of him. That's my main thing. And is a 5th round pick worth James Cook, not having James Cook on your roster and riding it out with Ray Davis, a rookie, and Ty Johnson? It could be. Yeah. It very well could be. But I think, you know, like you said, Lance, he knows the system. He's produced here. He's a good running back, but yeah, I just don't see you getting much out of him when it comes to a trade, mostly because, again, if he was under contract, that's a different thing. But it's kind of like DK Metcalf situation or whoever else. Think of any big name that got traded, even Stephon Diggs, right? When Stephon Diggs got traded from the Bills, he already had the contract and they already had to maneuver around that. And they took money off of his contract. Where it's a running back, you want to trade for a running back and then pay him $15 million. It's going to be hard to find a team that will want to do that. And what team really out there is that desperate for a running back?
I think ultimately they do obviously want him to play the season out, and they think that his value lies more in getting the production that you'll get from him on the field this year. I totally agree with that. I wasn't trying to suggest anything otherwise. I was just playing a little bit of devil's advocate there, because I think if you are looking to actually get the most return from James Cook, that this would be your best chance. If someone offered you something you couldn't, pass up, I think you'd be looking for, making a deal, and he would be the chip that you'd be willing to part with, I guess, given all the parameters we've set here. If he's not going to be brought back and someone makes you an offer that's hard to refuse, I think you pull the trigger.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I do also want to bring this comment from Roy up as well. This is a good point as well. If he does leave in free agency, you could still get a comp pick and still have gotten the last year out of him.
100%.
And we know how much Brandon Beane
anyway.
Brandon Beane loves his comp picks. He loved them. So we'll see. I mean, I think it also depends on how James Cook does with the next few months. If it gets to May and June and he is talking about holding out or he's getting upset on social media still, then I think you do look to trade him. Also, again, that's another thing with teams is not just only you're going to have to pay the guy, or you're going to want to have to deal with a guy that's been on social media and a running back at that much. I mean, we just talked about how many running backs in this draft alone are going. So, and if he does get traded, I think it'll be after the draft. Even if he does get traded, I don't think that it will be a draft day trade because I think teams will want to see how the running backs fall, and then they'll go from there.
Right on. So we have this question here in our outline, and we'll just go through it a little bit. Like, what does the roster construction as it stands tell you about what the draft strategy might be? Because, like we mentioned on defense, I think the biggest hole is that one tech defensive tackle. But as far as a starter goes, CB2 is the biggest need as far as having a starter. So, right now, as the roster sits, what do you believe? Oh, stop the count. Maryland's leading. Just let them win. Sorry about that. So, but what do you guys think the roster construction currently says about what the Bills draft strategy may be, or how do you interpret it as affecting the draft strategy for the Bills?
It's tough because I think one, it tells me that they're very confident in their safety room, and that they are fairly confident in their cornerback room right now. I mean, for them to go after Joey Bosa and Ogunjobi tells me that they were fairly confident in bringing in Dane Jackson and saying, well, we'll get somebody else, or they really like somebody that they think they can get for cornerback too.
Maryland's not winning anymore.
as Maryland loses the lead there. But yeah, I mean, it's tough because we talked about it a few weeks ago. Brandon Beane rarely goes into drafts with this big of a hole at a position. And we've talked about there's a difference between need and a difference between a absolute like hole in the defense or I'm blanking on the word right now, but I think cornerback 2 is the biggest hole. That's what the biggest hole in this defense. But is it the biggest need on this team right now? Some people would argue that a 1T is the biggest need over a cornerback 2 right now in the first round. So for me, I don't know. It's tough to say what the roster tells me right now. I mean, the one thing I'll tell you for sure is that they are very confident in their offense, and they probably won't take an offensive pick until the 5th round at the earliest. But yeah, I mean, I think it tells me that they're fairly confident in at least their cornerback depth.
I don't know how they really can be confident in the cornerback depth. I think a lot of that was they figured like what in the Bills defense with Sean McDermott, the secondary generally plays pretty well, almost no matter what, like very scheme oriented. Like Dane Jackson's been here, he's done well. I just think that they need a game wrecker on the D line, and Joey Bosa can potentially. I'm not saying he's a huge game wrecker, but he's a guy who can come in and get after the quarterback, and that's what they haven't had in the playoffs in the past, few years. It's the secondary has not looked great, but it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. Is that because we're not getting any sacks, or is it, vice versa? So I don't know. I think the draft is definitely going to be very defensive heavy, almost at all levels. Linebacking room, maybe they don't need to draft anybody, but they seem to take a flyer on a linebacker every year. So a D-line and corner, and it wouldn't shock me if they drafted a safety either earlier on. So I think it tells you it's going to be defensive heavy. Also going to need a tight end. I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion that Quentin Morris was going to come back, and that's maybe looking more and more gone as the days go on. So going to need a tight end on offense, and that's kind of about it. A receiver would like a receiver, but that's not like a huge need. So, yeah, I think day 1 and 2 is going to be very defensive heavy unless a receiver falls to them.
Yeah, I mean, so like the safety room is interesting because Rapp is only on contract for 1 more year here. So
2 more.
Right, 1 after this season, right? So like
skipping ahead.
So yeah, this year and 1 more. So I don't know. He's not necessarily the long-term guy. So like, would they go out and swing for the Malachi Starks type where he's could be your center fielder for years, and like you have Bishop and Rapp to be those downhill strong safeties? like I could see that, but it was going to take some work to, unless he, Starks falls to, pretty far, which not super likely, but I guess it could happen. Then you could take safety there. I don't really love any corner right where we are in the first round, so I think they can maybe do something in the second there. But defensive line just seems like the first round pick, and that's what it tells us. Like I mentioned, CB2 definitely is the biggest hole as far as in the starting lineup. Dane Jackson, as Ben mentioned in the comments, like it probably makes you the least confident in what you have as a starter versus your edge or your defensive tackle room. But I just think for the overall longevity and long-term success, I just think like defensive line needs to be get the best defensive lineman in here that you can, and even trade up to get one if you can, in my opinion.
See, I struggle with with edge rusher being a need on this team. Just because, again, you go get Joey Bosa, you have Epinesa under contract, you have Rousseau who you just extended, you have Javon Solomon who they like. Are you going to go like?
But Bosa's only here for 1 year, and he can be a game wrecker, but I don't think he's going to be
like Dane Jackson's only here for a year. You don't have that's the whole thing. Like you at least have Epinesa then that you could bring back. You have a guy that you could get next year. You have Solomon who will be here next year. But what is cornerback to? What is the solution there? I mean, I've even seen it in the comments.
The way it's looking right now, what's cornerback 1 next year?
I mean, yeah, but you have an edge rusher next year. You have Rousseau. I mean, it's just it's to me. You don't have a guy at cornerback 2, and we saw this in the playoffs. What was everybody complaining about? Our cornerback 2 getting burnt over and over and over again.
But as Scott mentioned too, like they are able to do more with less talent in the defensive backfield because of the coaching and the scheme. Where they've lacked, and the reason the CBs and the defensive backs have been getting burnt is because their push up front is lacking there. So you need those studs up front and D tackle and defensive edge to get to the disrupting the quarterback and disrupting the timing of these plays so that they're not available to hit those quick hitters, because the quick hitters are pretty hard to stop regardless of how good your cornerback is. Like we're not going to play a bunch of press man. We don't have a bunch of guys that can go up and just press the guys and take the slants away all the time. Like the way that you'd be able to do that is to win quickly on the defensive line and take away a passing lane to prevent that. And so like
they also
that's the main thing for the Bills' success is the defensive line being more successful. And I think the real thing is we've hit on more defensive backs, I think, than we have on defensive linemen. So I think people may be more confident being able to get that guy, that Christian Benford, and Teron Johnson, in later rounds. So that I think the suggestion is just earlier rounds, you want to swing for the defensive linemen because they think that the cornerbacks can be had and be successful in later rounds.
I get that, but at the same time, again, like it's just how many edge rushers are you going to have on this roster? You have Hoyt that you brought in as well. You just have so many guys. Are you going to spend a first round pick? It's my same argument for a receiver. Are you going to want to spend a first round pick on a guy who's going to see 40% of the snaps, 30% of the snaps, and bank on him?
If we hit on him, he won't see that percentage of the snaps.
And if you miss on him, then you still have a hole at cornerback too. But yet, if you miss on him,
anything though.
But if you miss on edge this year, let's say you take a first round pick and you miss on edge, you still have 5 other guys at the position. You just signed Hoyt to a 3-year deal. You have Rousseau under contract.
But what about Bosa, one tech defensive tackle?
People aren't talking about enough. Bosa's contract is set up for them to probably try to re-sign him next year.
What about
defensive tackle? He's on the books for $7 million next year, whether we like it or not.
I don't know if that necessarily means instead of trying to re-sign him, they do that with a lot of people's deals.
Not for $7 million. He's on.
Well, that's because we didn't have the money this year to like swing it. Next year, the cap's going to go up, hopefully, and they'll be able to move some things around. But they did that so they could get him in this year and give him like a salary that would be realistic, but not have it kill the cap because we don't have a lot of room.
Right.
I don't know. I don't.
I'm not suggesting completely edge though, Shoop. I think like
I know,
defensive
and
lineman. I think that one tech is probably more important earlier on. The bigger stud you can get, if you can get that Kenneth Grant in here or a guy like that, makes a lot more sense. And I can agree that the edge position does have some people at it, but even so, I don't know. It's Rousseau with Bosa, and then you have Epinesa and Solomon, and then Hoyt is suspended. So you really only have four guys sitting there, and they like to rotate heavy. So you're going to need young guys to come in. I'm not suggesting they need to take them in the first round, though. I think they can get them with their second round pick, even. But I think the first three consensus here amongst us on the show is that the first three picks are more than likely all going to be defenders in one way or shape or form.
I'll say is our fourth corner right now is a guy who Scott never wants to see on the football field unless it's a kick return or a punt return, and it's Brandon Codrington.
Corey Couch.
So what about the dude from Penn State?
Jaquan Hardy.
Yeah, I put him above Codrington.
He's a nickel corner out of Penn State who's 5'10". Are you going to want him to put him outside and when he was on the practice squad last year?
Over Codrington, absolutely. Put me out there before.
Well, yeah, over Codrington.
I'll hold.
Shoot the ball.
Oh, I just, and I won't be mad if they take an edge rusher first round. I just don't. I think D tackle and corner are by far a bigger need than edge rusher, just because again. Are you going to hold five guys on the roster then the whole season and play a first-round pick 30% of the snaps when you could play a cornerback 2 majority of the time and go get them? And I do like this. I do think there are corners there that you could take at 30 that would fill it well. I mean, I'm a big Trey Amos fan, or Amos. I'm not entirely sure on the pronunciation yet, but I just – what you're gonna bank on a cornerback 2 in the 5th round? I mean, Benfords don't come around all the time, and I know that we've
no one's saying 5th round.
I know
it's gonna be day 1 or 2.
But we were talking about late. We mentioned late round cornerbacks. I mean, we've hit on early edge rusher more than we've hit on early corner, which I guess would be a good argument for edge rushers. But I don't know. It's a tough thing because I just think edge rusher, if you're going based on need, corner is a bigger need than edge rusher. If you're going based on maybe what could be the biggest difference maker at the end of the year, if you hit on the pick, then there's an argument there that I will say there's an argument that edge rusher, if you hit on it in the first round, is a big thing. But then you're going to have people complaining about paying Joey Bosa if we take an edge rusher and the edge rusher ends up playing really well. It's like, well, we just spent all that money on Joey Bosa when we could have spent it on a cornerback too.
Yeah, people can complain about whatever they want. I just want to win a Super Bowl. So, like, whatever gets this team over the edge to win the Super Bowl, and literally, like, the biggest frustration in every playoff game against the Chiefs, it seems to be that we cannot, even though their offensive linemen seem to always go in there, like, being suspect, and they moved, was it Tooney or who was it? Like, moved out to tackle.
Yeah, they moved Tooney out.
And it's tackle. Like, you still can't win. And it's like, we just need a guy that can win consistently on the defensive line. It's going to help the back end a ton. And it's not to say we don't need the back end. It's just to say that we can probably get the back end guy later in the draft and not need to spend the first couple of picks on a CB just because we don't have a CB2. But I get it. We need CB. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I just don't think it needs to be the first pick of the draft.
With the Chiefs, though, and with the way the Bills play defense, we've seen it even 13 seconds. That was because they were playing off coverage, and again, it was corner. Like the Eagles,
that's not because of who the corners were. That's because of the defense they were told to play.
I know. So if you're going to play defense where Mahomes is going to get the ball out in a second and a half, like he does every time against the Bills, and that's the style that they play against him. What are you going to like?
But if you beat your man and you can prevent that throwing lane, then you can.
I mean, the Eagles did a little bit of both. The Eagles have drafted both. They're difference makers.
The Eagles beat the Chiefs. The Eagles didn't blitz one time in the Super Bowl and absolutely demolished the Chiefs. They rushed for every single play.
Straight up man to man because they had Cooper
because their D line was getting home.
They had guys being able to shut them down, and there was
both. But because the D line was getting home.
They kept him in the pocket and they made him throw the football downfield, and
They didn't even let him throw the football downfield. He had no time to do anything.
Yeah. And that rush came from the middle. So I think like we can all
also don't
agree
play the same
that
style.
D tackle, if we can get that D tackle, that up front rush up the middle to be more consistent and more solidified, that's going to make this team the best that they can be.
Yeah. I mean, look, if they end up getting an edge rusher in the first round that ends up making the game-winning sack in the Super Bowl, I'm fine with it. But if they take a cornerback first round that makes the game-sealing pick, I'll also be fine with it. I'm with Lance, though. Kind of got.
What if they take a receiver who catches the game-winning touchdown?
I think if Matthew Golden's there, if they are
or if they
having a
draft a
chance of
kicker
getting
who
him,
makes the game-winning field goal.
Tyler Bass is here, man.
Yeah, Joey was talking about the positions of need. I guess they could need a kicker in this draft. That could be
To draft a
look
punter.
out for. Oh no,
They could
Florida's
draft a
guy's
punter.
hurt. I'm so sad.
ESPN doesn't even have any punters listed in this draft, even though there's a bunch of them that are going into the draft.
I'm sure a lot of them would like to be drafted.
Don't need a long snapper, that's for sure.
That's right. We got the highest paid one in the history of the NFL.
This was definitely a more fun exercise with back and forth. Appreciate the conversation. It looks like some guys in the comments appreciate the friendly arguments. We don't. Sometimes we get on a streak where we just agree with each other the whole time, and I think these are a little bit more fun. And yeah, there's so many ways you can go, so many ideas about what you can do here in this draft, and we're going to get into more player-specific discussion in the coming weeks. This was more meant to be a 50,000-foot view of draft strategy, more positional, rather than like names of guys we definitely want to come in here. But I think Scott's mentioned, his guy this draft seems to be Isaiah Bond. He definitely thinks that would be a good fit here. Ben's guys like Ashton Genty, probably no.
Talik Williams, come on now.
So Talik Williams, TJ was mentioning him earlier. The edge rusher from Georgia, which we would have to probably take in the first round, right? So there's that coming full circle. Another
guy. I saw the.
My guy is really just going to be Henderson out of Ohio State. That I would just like them to get as a running back in the draft. I don't really have like an early round. If Matthew Golden from Texas can get to the Bills somehow via trade up or anything, I would go for that. But I think it would be wiser to go defense early, like we already talked about. So with that, we're going to say goodbye and let you all get back to college basketball for tonight, and go Terps. I got them in the bracket. I got them on BetMGM, so it's going to be either double excitement or double disappointment tonight. So we're happy you guys all stayed with us here for an hour, and we really appreciate it. Go out there, like and share. Go out on Built in Buffalo's social media pages and check out all the good Bills content we have. We are sponsored by Monster Energy Drink, the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo. And yeah, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go.